this president is unstable, unhinged, a double-minded individual that, quite frankly, is a threat to our democracy.
The Democrat mayor of Chicago. So what, double-minded? Is that what double-minded? He's got twice the brain that J.B. Pritzker has. They use the words, but they don't know what they mean. Even their billionaires are ignorant, semi-illiterate, corrupt. Are they all commies, Michael? Because we learned of another commie yesterday. Turns out James Comey was a communist, too. You see this? James Comey, the crook, what is he, 6'10" or something? And the crooked FBI guy abusing power like a Soviet leader on behalf of the Democrat Party, the left. I remember when the news media told us 100 times, oh, he's a Republican. You can't be critical of him. He's a Republican. It was the only time they ever suggested that you can't be critical of a Republican. Turns out it's because he really wasn't a Republican, but he revealed, and this was lost to the sands of time until it reemerged yesterday or night before last, that James Comey, in a magazine interview, New York Magazine, a number of years ago, said, oh, yeah, I was a communist. I was a communist, and that just washed away. That did not remain on his permanent record, because when you're a Democrat, there really is no permanent record. You get to make it up as you go along. It's good to be a Democrat. Yeah, it turns out not only John Penitentiary-Face Brennan, the Communist Party voter that Barack Obama made director of the CIA, and then he tampered with and corrupted our presidential election in 2020, along with the felonious 51. Turns out James Comey was a commie, too, and Barack Obama was mentored by a communist by the name of Frank Marshall Davis when Barack Obama was a teenager, and then he chose the Communist Party voter. He voted for the Communist Party candidate Gus Hall for the presidency of the United States. John Brennan, penitentiary face, made him CIA director because, they talked. Really? You're a communist? I'm a communist. Isn't that great? Are you an Islamist, too? Because we got that going. And now it turns out James Comey was also a communist. Michael Piercy, when you were 20, were you a communist? Interesting. You weren't. Not even you were a communist. But Barack Obama's CIA director and then the FBI director, James Comey, communist. That's an interesting revelation. And it turns out that Rush Limbaugh talked about this years ago because it was in New York Magazine. But when you're a Democrat and the Democrats are protecting you with their information dominance, they can just make little blemishes like that disappear as though they never happened. It is good to be a Democrat. Well, happy Thursday to you, and welcome back once again. We continue to be at 888-630-9625. That's not the biggest news of the day. There is a lot of big news today having to do with what we're going to call peace in the Middle East, or at least a Middle East peace deal. And the headline at the Fox News Channel is, Hamas accepts Trump's peace plan, ending 2-year-long war. Well, you can say, get the Nobel Peace Prize ready, but even that will probably never happen. And there are a lot of issues related to this because, we're going to return the dead bodies of the hostages that we kidnapped and raped and murdered and, buried in shallow graves and tunnels that were dug with UN money. But the dead body, what do they have? 48 hostages, some living, some they murdered long ago, and they've been holding onto the bodies because they're bloodthirsty ghouls, they're savages from hell, they're troglodytes from Middle Earth, and eventually they're going to have to be completely annihilated because you have no choice. They leave you with no choice. Civilization, in order to survive, must destroy the savages that would destroy civilization, given half a chance, and that's Hamas and the Islamists, and the Iranians are behind it all. And this is fascinating because now that there is, and it's the headline everywhere you look, Hamas accepts Trump peace deal, ending 2-year war, and all this. And now the Democrats are going to have to come out in favor of war and in favor of Hamas. Well, they've already done that, haven't they? Democrats are going to have to come out in favor of war and against peace deals because Trump has a peace deal, so they're against it. Again, it's like the Groucho Marx song from long ago. Whatever it is, I'm against it. No matter what's for or who commenced it, I'm against it. That's the Democrat Party.
I don't know what they have to say. It makes no difference anyway. Whatever it is, I'm against it. No matter what it is or who commenced it, I'm against it.
See, Groucho Marx, he knew a lot of Democrats even in the 1930s, and they're going to have to come out now against peace. Yeah, they're also, this is a fun one, the Democrats are against President Trump striking Venezuelan drug boats, bringing drugs into the United States by various methods and various routes. And the Democrats, they're in favor of the drug cartels. Last year, I think we lost only 80,000 Americans, 80,000, a number greater than we lost in the Vietnam War from 1959 to 1975. But in 1 year, we have a number greater than that are killed with fatal drug overdoses, poisoned by fentanyl and other drugs that the Democrats support the importation of and so on. But there is an amazing poll out, and I've got the numbers for you today. Americans overwhelmingly support Trump administration blowing drug boats out of the water. But a lot of Democrats, they're with the drug boats. They're with the drug boats. They're with the Venezuelan cartels. They're with the communists they call themselves socialists. In Venezuela, in New York, they call themselves socialists too. But they're communists. Isn't it amazing? And the Democrats, they're in favor of Antifa, 1930s German communist group Antifa, a terrorist group going back to the 1930s in Deutschland. And the Democrats are with Antifa, especially when they're attacking federal police, wherever they find them, Chicago, outside Chicago, Portland, Oregon, anywhere but Dallas, Texas, where a psycho sniper murdered 2 illegal aliens while he was trying to murder 2 ICE agents. The Democrats are in favor of the gang member who's an illegal alien that put a $10,000 bounty on a federal law enforcement officer. I've been playing audio of him the last couple of days. The Democrat Party really, you guys need to disband. You need to be prohibited from meeting in public. Oh, what about my First Amendment rights? What are they talking about? They got Democrats in Illinois talking about civil war, and they don't even know what the first civil war was. It was at Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, where there are 110,000 gang members, and that's no problem. He thinks that's a pretty good number, and hundreds of homicides every year. And the Democrats, including the Democrat mayor there, who used to be an educator, I'm making quotation marks with my fingers, a teacher and a school principal, and he thinks everything's just great the way that it is. Don't touch a thing. Don't change anything. They want to keep the murder rate just where it is, or maybe up a little. That's one area of growth that they could facilitate. But with that said, we've got Comey the Commie to go with Brennan, the Communist Party voter, and then tampering with the presidential election, and Barack Obama being mentored by a Communist Party member, Frank Marshall Davis, and it all starts to make more sense. Then you've got the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes of the world who elected because of her buttocks, and she should still be tending bar somewhere in New York, where I'm sure she was no good at that either. Being a good bartender takes a lot more brain power than she brings to the dance, that's for sure. But that stuff struck me yesterday. And also then there's this peace in the Middle East thing. And I want to talk about that today too, because I don't want to be cynical or anything. But when you're negotiating with terrorists who kidnap, rape, and murder, and then hold the dead bodies of them, and they've got a 1,000-year plan to destroy Western civilization and Christendom, and a 100-year plan to destroy the Middle East, the entire region, and then make their way into Europe and to grow your population by having 10 kids in every household, while the British have 0.8 kids per household, and they're planning on taking over. Saw a video the other day of a Muslim in Canada saying the same thing, being interviewed. And he said, oh, yeah, we're taking over Canada by our birth rate. And soon Sharia law will be the norm in Canada because the Islamists have a long-term plan to conquer the world by the sword when necessary and by the sperm donor when convenient. And the people of Hamas and Iran, they're not giving up. This may be a pause in their long-term plan to conquer the world and Islamize the world, so that and liberals are like, oh, this is in order to be open-minded, I've got to support that. And they should start throwing themselves off of rooftops at this point, because the Islamists will eventually get to that. So the peace deal, we're talking about a Monday release of the hostages, possibly sooner, but don't bank on anything with the troglodytes. 48 hostages, as I said. And, I mean, I got to say, it's one of these situations where, as they say in the Gaza Strip, don't count your goats before they're dressed up in lingerie and dancing on your bedside table, because it could be too soon. Do not count your goats before they have fishnet stockings and lipstick on, like Vicky the goat. Because we're also looking at the next step. Hamas has to disarm, and I think in order to disarm them, that's going to take machetes. That's going to take heavy equipment to disarm them, because they're not disarming people, and they have to stand down. And if they stand down, it will be temporary. Then they are going to get back to their genocide program, which is what they die for. In some cultures, you say it's what they live for. But there it's what they die for, because what they live for is to die, and while killing, while murdering. And we've got all that. So I want to get into that today as well. It's a big deal, and I'm very hopeful, but I've got to say I have little faith in the troglodytes to remain good to their word. And that's almost a joke turn of phrase when you're talking about the troglodytes from hell. Isn't that amazing? Also, the Democrat named Bad Bunny. Is that his name, Bad Bunny? His name is Bad Bunny. That should be like a woman name somewhere in the Simi Valley or something, shouldn't it? But is that where it is, the Simi Valley? And Bad Bunny, he's supposed to be the halftime show at the Super Bowl, and he was at a Los Yankees baseball game last night, and there was at the seventh inning stretch, the audience stood up and sang, "God bless America, God bless America." But Bad Bunny, who was chosen to do the halftime show at the Super Bowl, he sat there looking surly because he's a Democrat. I was kind of surprised he didn't detonate his vest or something, maybe self-immolate. That could happen. That could be the grand finale in the Super Bowl. He'd come out and hate on America and be a racist and be a communist, and then maybe self-immolate as the denouement. The denouement, that's French. And that'd make it more interesting. If there was any guarantee that he'd self-immolate at the end of the halftime show, I would tune in for it. Also, yesterday, it was flying around all over the internet that Turning Point USA was going to Charlie Kirk's organization, who was assassinated by a Democrat. Turning Point USA was going to put on an alternative and alternate halftime show, a musical performance, and it turns out that was nothing more than internet hooey, a lot of hooey. I like to not curse, so I'll use hooey. But Bad Bunny, God bless America, and he just looked surly and spitting on people. He didn't really spit on people, but it was metaphorical, and we've got that. Also there was an arrest yesterday in the Pacific Palisades fire that the Democrats blamed on global warming and climate change because they're all mentally ill, and they're mental dwarves, and they're indoctrinated communists, and whatever the party tells them. It's like Katie Porter, the earth is on fire and we're all going to die soon. She comes from a congressional district not far from Los Angeles, as a matter of fact. And she's a real piece of work, isn't she? She's running for governor. She's the front runner. But the arrest was made, and surprise, surprise, here's a leftist who donated to Joe Biden. Not a lot, but he didn't have a lot. He caused billions of dollars in damage and destroyed families forever. Generations of families burned, routed, because a Democrat, Joe Biden supporter, Joe Biden voter, set fire to the Pacific Palisades, one of the most beautiful parts of the world, before he burned it to the ground. And he is naturally a Biden donor. So we've got that coming up. The arsonist in California, Bad Bunny, Katie Porter. Honestly, The Democrats are everywhere. The Antifa people, based on a communist terrorist group out of Germany in the 1930s, the Democrat Party has picked up the machete. I mean the mantle. Aren't they amazing? We're at 888-630-9625. A few things we're going to get to today. Also in the state of Oregon, where Democrats choose everyone because that's how it works. The general, one-star brigadier general in charge of the National Guard in Oregon, was testifying publicly, and he said that the National Guard in Oregon will protect the protesters. And now the protesters are the problem, and you got this communist 1930s group Antifa violently attacking the federal government and federal government facilities, buildings, officers, and the Oregonian National Guard boss, the brigadier in charge of the National Guard. Oh, yeah, we're going to protect that's fine if they're protesting peacefully, which has not been in evidence. Any peaceful protest has not been in evidence for quite some time. They're violently attacking their mobs of criminals. They're a communist group, and then too stupid to know it most of the time, but they're being used. They're like Mongo. They're, but pawns in game of life. And the one-star general in charge of the National Guard there says, oh, yeah, we'll be protecting the protesters. They're rioting and burning and attacking, and there's like a civil war starting under your nose, and you're going to use the state military force to defend the insurrectionists because he's a liberal, apparently. This is what happens when you make a liberal a one-star general and put him in charge of isn't that amazing, of the National Guard in a state. Just extraordinary stuff. Oh, and I get to play a Rush Limbaugh soundbite today, which is not something I get to do every day, and that's big fun, having to do with James Comey, because once again, Rush was ahead of the curve, and James Comey, and he paid attention to something that everyone should have paid attention to, but no one in our news media did, and I got to say, Republicans on Capitol Hill let it slip by, too, having to do with James Comey having been a communist as a young man. He got better, he says, but I don't know anybody that was a communist I'm asking around. Hey, were you a communist when you were 20? No, I wasn't. No. CBS News staffers urged to treat both parties equally. What? CBS News staffer? What? Now, I don't like communists any more than I like Islamists because they're the two most murderous groups on earth and have been forever and ever. And it should be noted every time they come up in conversation. But the communists that surround the Democrats today, and a lot of them call they got the Mondami, the Commie in New York. He's running for mayor of New York, and the Democrats are going to vote him in. And New York will probably end up like Pacific Palisades in California, which was torched by a Democrat. And it turns out, and I want to get to that too, Joe Biden donor burned that multi-billion-dollar fire in what was once beautiful Pacific Palisades. And the Democrats there aren't allowing people to rebuild and making it as difficult as possible because they're idiots and communists. Just amazing. But there was so much to get to every day thanks to the crazy Democrat Party. But a video was sent out on the Twitter, and I've got to say I first saw it on a Clay and Buck tweet thread. That's called X now. And boy, this is kind of an amazing thing because Rush Limbaugh talked about this years ago, about James Comey being a communist, because it turns out that James Comey did an interview with New York Magazine, just called New York, in 2003. That's a long time ago now. That's 22 years ago. And then and where he confessed, well, he didn't consider it a confession. I think it was a brag that he was a communist when he was young. And I went and I found the article, New York Magazine, Mr. Comey Goes to Washington. You know, like he's a Frank Capra movie. He's Jimmy Stewart. He's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And it's nothing like that, of course. It's very, very different, especially when you're a communist. He bragged about it in this 2003, 22-year-old New York Magazine article. James Comey says, well, Comey had been savaged by William Safire, a writer, New York Times, and lauded by Chuck Schumer, a communist, and the Lizard King as well. Just what kind of Republican is he anyway? This sets Comey howling again. I must be doing something right, he says. In college, I was left of center. I thought a gradual process, and through a gradual process, I found myself more comfortable with a lot of ideas and approaches the Republicans were using, he said. He voted for Jimmy Carter in 1980, but in 1984, quote, I voted for Reagan. I had moved from communist to whatever I am now. Sure, I'm not even sure how to characterize myself politically. Well, you're communist? Maybe at some point I'll have to figure it out. I mean, he's not smart enough to figure out where he is himself politically, but he was a communist and voted. When you're a communist in 1980, you could, John Brennan voted for Gus Hall, the Communist Party candidate for the presidency of the United States. That was 1980, I believe. Might have been 1976, but I think it was 1980 that penitentiary-faced Brennan voted for Gus Hall, the Communist Party candidate. And now we see that James Comey admitted long ago that he was a communist. And it reminds me of Van Jones, now at CNN, but who was recruited very actively, very aggressively by the Obama administration, who also was a communist. And I don't know if he's still a communist because the networks have paid him millions of dollars to be a communist. And it's, how do you stay a communist in the United States of America when you have millions of dollars? Hey, I really wish the government would take all this away from me. You know, what kind of an idiot do you have to be? And it's, Mr. Free Ride through Ivy League, his magic carpet ride through the Ivy League. But he says he voted for Carter in 1980, and I voted for Reagan. I'd moved from communist to whatever I am now. Well, I just don't know anybody that identified as a communist when they were young who ended up being Reagan Republicans. But he said he voted for him the second time around, but not the first time around. That doesn't mean he's not a communist when he said I had moved from communist to whatever I am now. And Rush Limbaugh talked about this when the article came out back in 2003, and it was noticed for a minute because at the time he was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, a very busy post, and the New York Magazine was doing a glowing piece about him. So he figured to them, if he tells them he was a communist, that's bragging, and they will play it very well. Now, Rush Limbaugh, the video resurfaced, again, just in the last couple of days. And how is it that this was buried while Comey's been going through all this controversy, all this and the political lunacy, and you'd think the Democrats, because they hate him because he didn't charge Hillary Clinton with crimes for destroying all kinds of classified information, which she did and had people do for her, and the bleach bit and the hammers and destroying hard drives and phones and campaign equipment and all that. And Comey is like, well, it doesn't look good, but I'm not going to charge her. And the Republicans are so inept when it comes to politics. The Republicans should have at that point said, wait a minute, this is the commie Comey, and they just let him go, let him off the hook. No, then he said he voted for Reagan, so that makes him okay. It doesn't, but I want to play Rush Limbaugh because Rush Limbaugh talked about it after the New York Magazine article came out. It's October 10th of 2003. Tomorrow is October 10th, coincidentally, and the article says, yeah, I'd moved from communist to whatever I am now. Well, does that mean not communist? But Rush Limbaugh talked about it in 2003.
Are you aware that James Comey used to be a communist? In a 2003 interview with New York Magazine, James Comey said before voting for Jimmy Carter in 1980, he'd been a communist. He admitted, I'd moved from communist to whatever I am now. Now, we know that John Brennan, Obama's CIA director, was a communist, or at least had voted for the Communist Party. But I had never heard this about Comey.
I've got to confess, I had never heard this about Comey, and I need to clarify, because the article came out in 2003, Rush Limbaugh talking about it on the radio with the Ditto Cam, and I was looking at it, and I was like, that can't be back in 2003. And in fact, that was Rush Limbaugh on May 17th of 2019, so about 6 years ago. And so Rush Limbaugh was talking about it when James Comey was in the news, and 60 Minutes was not, ABC was not, George Stephanopoulos was not, Chunk Todd was not talking about Comey having been a communist, and Rush Limbaugh talked about the other kingpin intelligence community and federal law CIA director John Brennan being a communist, and then you find out Comey's a communist, and you already know that Barack Obama didn't quite brag about it in his book, Dreams from My Father, but he talked about his mentor, Frank, who it was later learned was Frank Marshall Davis, a card-carrying member of the Communist Party. And isn't that amazing? I got to tell you, the commies that flocked around the Obama people, worth noting.
Now we find out that under Obama, the CIA director and the FBI director both had histories of not just flirtation, but serious immersion into communism.
Commies.
And like the KGB always said, no one ever leaves the KGB.
The Rush music coming up there, the Rush tone. That's I haven't heard that in quite a while. That's great. So Rush was talking about it 6 years ago, and then it just faded away because the Republicans don't enjoy the kind of information dominance that the left has, the Democrat Party has, where they vilify, they try, they make up this stuff about Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein, a New York Democrat, all of his pals, Democrats. Donald Trump was a Democrat back then, and for all practical purposes, certainly, and beloved by Orca, Orca Winfrey and the rest of the gang. But isn't it amazing? So these commies from James Comey, not an important position or anything, to penitentiary face Brennan, not an important position, and then inside the White House, who was it that was bragging about bringing Van Jones into the White House? They were so happy. They had been working on him for a long time, and they finally got Van Jones to come in, and I was pointing out at the time, he's got communist credentials, and the Obama White House was thrilled to have him. The Obama White House was thrilled to promote James Comey to CIA director. And our news media, and then we got the FBI director, James Comey, chameleon. And our news media is nowhere to be found on this. New York Magazine wrote about it in 2003, and then it just vanished. And it's a throwaway, 6 paragraphs down or something. Oh, I was a communist. And, oh, really? Oh, isn't that cocktail party chic? Just amazing stuff. The Democrat Party. They are something, and there are commies everywhere you look. Rush Limbaugh knew it. New York Magazine published it 23 years ago, and then it disappeared because when you're a Democrat, life is good, and the Democrat Party protects you, and that means their information dominance is there to backstop you at every turn. Isn't that amazing? Yes, sir. We've got that going for us. Now, with that said, we've got this Katie Porter, this lunatic Katie Porter. She's running for governor of California. She's the Democrat who was a member of the House of Representatives, and she was a lunatic when she was in the House of Representatives. And she is now, more and more videos are emerging of her, new and old, and doing the interview with a local CBS station in California, where she chewed out the reporter, and the reporter was doing a perfectly good job asking questions. Just amazing. Let's go to that, because Katie Porter may very well become the governor of the most populous state in the United States of America. But let's go. I'm looking at the clock. I'm wondering whether I have enough time to get into all the Katie Porter stuff all at once. I'm thinking I don't. Do I? Am I right? Yeah. Roll it over. Is that what you're saying? Is that what your hand signal is suggesting? He's doing those tricky radio hand signals and things like that. But yeah. All right. Let's tell you what. Let's take a break here and then come back. We're going to get to Katie Porter, because she's a leading Democrat, a really vicious cursing. They're all cursing up a storm now. Have you noticed this? The MFers and Fers and the S words. And Nancy Pelosi is dropping them, too, for the love of. Isn't it amazing? And, again, the media doesn't cover it because they cover up stories. They don't cover them. Isn't that amazing? And we got Bad Bunny coming up. And, of course, the arson in California, a Biden donor arrested. He grew up in France, which is another country altogether.
The earth is on fire, and we're all going to die soon.
All right, so much audio, and now I'm looking at the big board and the great American people calling in, and I want to go to talk to the great American people. And the commies everywhere around the Democrat Party. Let us go to the phones, Michael. Let's go to Ross, calling from Front Royal, Virginia. Ross, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hello, sir. You're a great American, and especially when you expose things like you're talking about now. I've always had a bewilderment is that birds of a feather flock together, and our current person who is running for governor was in the CIA at the same time as Brennan. And I've always wondered if she was recruited, because she's got a lot of similar ideology, and she's being protected. You're not allowed to ask certain questions or quote-unquote conspiracy theories. But I've always wanted to know, is she another one of those underlying, come out of the closet at some point in time as a, quote, socialist, in reality, a communist? Nobody's asked any question, but she was there, and she had to have been recruited to go into the CIA. So how did that come about? Because her ideology is too close to Brennan's and Comey's.
Well, and let me say this, Ross, because I looked this up a little bit, and the good people at the Washington Free Beacon published a story just a couple of months ago, August 6th of 2025. And the headline, the Washington Free Beacon, Virginia gubernatorial hopeful Abigail Spanberger raked in $50,000 from CCP member and electric vehicle tycoon from a Chinese Communist Party member. Virginia law prohibits foreign nationals from making political donations, but Chinese Communist Party members typically can't hold foreign citizenship. And Alana Goodman at the Washington Free Beacon wrote, Virginia's Democratic gubernatorial candidate Abigail Spanberger raked in $50,000 in campaign donations from an electric vehicle tycoon who's a member of the Chinese Communist Party, according to campaign finance records. The funding is perplexing, given that Virginia law forbids foreign nationals from making political contributions, and Chinese law typically bans Chinese Communist Party members from holding foreign citizenship or permanent residency. So Pin Nai, P-I-N, second word, N-I, an executive at Chinese automotive conglomerate Waxiang Group and the head of the company's American subsidiary, gave the donations to Spanberger's campaign in April and May. And I've got to say, Ross, it reminds me of Eric Swalwell, the Democrat congressman from California who started out as a city councilman when he met Fang Fang, who is a honeypot secret agent from the Chinese intelligence service that was sent to California in the United States to recruit Democrats to work for the Chinese Communist Party. And Fang Fang, while they're having an ongoing sexual affair, Fang Fang raised money for him, organized for him, got him elected to the House of Representatives, got him on the Intelligence Committee, and the New York Times is fine with that. And of course, Dianne Feinstein, Democrat Senator, California, had a Chinese agent on her staff in San Francisco for 20 years, and the FBI watched it happen and didn't mention it to her until the very end. And we've got a lot of this, and again, Van Jones, and on it goes. So the commies are still everywhere, and turns out Senator Joe McCarthy was more right than he was given credit for. Am I correct, Ross?
You're absolutely. And by the way, I'm glad you point out Senator Joe McCarthy, because he's been vilified when he shouldn't have, because he was spot on and correct in his analysis.
And they were everywhere. They were everywhere. Ross, thank you. Thank you, my friend. Let's go to Greg, calling from Rockville, Maryland. Gregory, don't have a lot of time for you, but you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Greg.
Thanks again. Love the show, man. I talked to you yesterday. I wanted to say, yeah, you're absolutely right about the Marxists here in Montgomery County. The county executive is Mark Elrich. He is a Marxist. I did some reporting and some investigation because, like you said, the media, even the local media, they will just ignore this stuff. But he went to El Salvador back in the late 80s as a member of the city council of Tacoma Park. And it's pretty clear from my research that he was basically being backed by a front group that was started by the Communist Party USA. This was back when, El Salvador had their civil war. So this guy is a Marxist. He was backed by Marxists. He's a member of the DSA, the Democrat Socialists, and this is right here in Montgomery County, right outside the nation's capital.
And I got to tell you, Greg, you just take a little look around, lift the veil a little bit, and the list grows and grows and grows.